This is the I Love Success podcast. I'm Peter Jabrukowski, and I have made a vow to myself to help as many people as possible to achieve their dreams. Let's get started. Hey guys, and welcome back to the I Love Success podcast. I am super excited to be here today, and as you probably know by now, my mission is to help people like yourself to go after your dreams, and hopefully we can give you some tools here on this show so you can level up in your life and create what you want, and not what your mom wants, your dad wants, your friends wants. Kind of ask yourself the right questions and go out and create your own life. And we all know it's been a challenging year, and I think when we face challenges we can also see and learn a lot of things about ourselves and see where the gaps are in our own life and focus on developing them, because life is beautiful and life is amazing, and I really want you to be able to enjoy that. This week I have a friend of mine, a fellow martial artist and karate practitioner. He is a really cool guy. I remember seeing him for the first time when we were at the national training. I think it was in 2008 or something. So we go way back, and we've seen each other a couple of times since then. And obviously, Oliver Enkamp, he has gone on a pretty cool route in his life. Now he's a MMA fighter. He has 3 consecutive wins in Bellator in exciting fashion. So I'm just excited to have this man who has dedicated his whole life to martial arts. So without further ado, welcome Oliver Enkamp.
Thank you very much. That was a great presentation.
Yeah, can you just, for people that don't know you, why did you start with martial arts, and why has it been so attractive to you to do this?
So I was kind of born into this martial arts environment because both of my parents ran a dojo when I was born, which is a karate gym basically. And my older brother, who's 2 years older than me, he started training as soon as he could walk. And I was the last one to get on that train, and the dojo became a normal place for me to hang out when I was a kid. And I would follow my parents to work, more or less, and join the training sessions. And what I believe it gave me most was not only like learning how to punch and kick and coordinate your body, which is also great for a kid to learn, no matter what sports you do, but also like the traditional values that came with the karate, like respect and discipline. And pretty early that gave me like my stamp, my label in school. When we grow up we kind of search our role, who am I, when we become teenagers. And I was early like the karate kid in school, so I really adapted that, title that I had, and tried to live it in the best way that I could. And to be completely honest, I didn't like karate at all first. And when I was a kid, I was super lazy. Like I only wanted to go out and play. So I would go to the training sessions, but as soon as we had the first water break, I would try to sneak out and hide somewhere and not come back into the dojo. But I think what got me motivated was when I started competing, because that gave me a goal. So before that, I had no goal with my training. I didn't know why I was there. Like a lot of parents put their kids in practice because it's the parents' dream, It's
Yeah.
not the kid's dream. And that was kind of the thing for me at first. But when I got to start compete, I suddenly had a goal, like improving myself for every competition.
Yeah, and how were you as a kid in karate? Were you talented, or how were you in the beginning?
So I've never been a physical talent in any way. Like I was pretty strong when I was a kid, but I wasn't especially coordinated, or uh, everything really that I have today, I have worked for. And my friends also started training, like my childhood friends, with me. So it became more of a thing. I wanna be with my friends. We all go to the practice together. But I've never been a competitive person at all. So I didn't like to compete, because often it creates like a little hostile environment, and I didn't even want that with anyone. So I like the fact in karate that you kind of have this mindset that you compete with yourself. You are your biggest enemy, so you want to progress and get better and better with every competition. And I did both kumite, which is point fighting, and kata, which is forms. And I think kata was my best. Um, what do you call? I was better
Basically,
at kata
yeah.
than kumite at first, so I really kind of put more emphasis on that for a long while, when I was a teenager up to high school. And uh, and the fact that I didn't have to compete with anyone else but myself, that was like a real good motivation for me. So I only had myself to if it didn't go my way, it was my fault. It was no one else in the team I could blame, or I didn't have to like bring another team down. So I was never into team sports really.
Yeah. And how did you overcome that fact? Like, uh, you went into fighting eventually, and how did you overcome that kind of fear of competing, but also, hey, now you have to be in this hostile environment when somebody wants to win over you physically?
Yeah. So that's like, we say often that martial arts is a lifelong journey, and it has really been like a lot of ups and downs until now. And I'm 29 years old, and I've been doing martial arts since I was like 4 or 5 maybe. And you really like grow into the process of competing, because as I said, I didn't like the competition environment at first, felt hostile to me. But what got me to do it was I could focus on myself and not on anyone else, and just becoming better in my art. So I had the approach of an artist doing it more than a competitor or an athlete. And I've always been into art in different forms. Like I love music. When I was a kid, I loved drawing and painting and writing stories, and like everything basically that's art has attracted me. And martial arts is another way of expressing yourself, right? You create your own fighting style with what you got, like your genetics and strength and weaknesses. And the whole approach of like um, getting better and finding out your weaknesses, that whole journey is super exciting to me. So I always kept my focus on myself and the process goals, not the results. So winning or losing was never the important thing, but like for example, there was maybe a technique that I really would want to score with a point with in this competition. If I did that, that was a win to me. So I learned something, and then maybe I lost the competition, but I still learned that move or that tactic that I wanted to apply in this fight. And so I kept my motivation through ups and downs all the way. But what eventually got me to mixed martial arts or MMA from karate was, it's a very subjective sport, especially kata, the forms. Like I might think that I did better, but the judges thought the other guy did better because maybe they favor his style over mine, but some other judge would have scored it differently. And the kumite, the point fighting, it was also so many rules, and felt like every year they applied new rules. Like now you
Yeah.
can only grab the other guy's gi for 3 seconds, before it was 5 seconds. And so I got all these warnings and disqualifications, like you kicked too low, no, you did a round punch to the head, you can only do straight punches. And all of this felt so restricting to me, like I couldn't use my body in a free way, you know. So I started training kickboxing as like cross training when I was around 15, and when I was 18 I was allowed in Swedish rules to compete in kickboxing. So I tried it, and then I saw Lyoto Machida, who was fighting in the UFC, and he used his karate very effectively against these boxers and wrestlers and kickboxers, you know, and he became the champion that year in the light heavyweight division. And that sparked something in me, like, oh wow, maybe I can use my karate like approach to go after this and become a mixed martial artist, you know, and learn all the skills. So the year after, it was 2009, I attended a Swedish seminar called MMA Academy, um, and that was like a summer camp um, for mixed martial arts. So they brought in the best trainers in different disciplines. We had Martin Lidberg, who is an Olympic wrestler. We had George Scott, who is an Olympic boxer. Jürgen Krut, who is a world champion Thai boxer. Omar Buish, who is a Swedish MMA pioneer, who is also my head coach today. And the last one, I think there was 5 trainers, 4 or 5. Anyway, so I was there for like 5 days in this summer camp, and I didn't know what to expect. Like, I thought I was great at fighting because I had a black belt in karate and I had been doing this my whole life. And then after the first day of the seminar, I had learned like clinching and knees and takedowns and scrambles and submissions. And I remember just running back to my room, because we had these rooms. You slept there for 5 days. And I called my brother up, like, oh, you can't believe this. Like, there's so much to learn. Like, we're total beginners. And that's really motivating to me. Like, learning new things is the best thing I know. I know a lot of people hate being bad at stuff. Because they like, you know, they like to win, but me not being a competitive person, that is a real fuel to me. Like, oh, I'm a beginner, I'm gonna progress so fast in this. So I remember calling him and telling him, like, when I get home we have to start to train this. And then I looked up the trainers that had been the instructors of the camp, and Omar Buish, he opened up the first MMA gym in Stockholm in the 90s. So I went to his gym and started learning the complete art of fighting over there. And that's when I realized, like, man, this black belt doesn't mean I know shit about fighting. It means I'm good at karate, you know. But there's two different things, and I didn't know that before. So to make a long story shorter, I started to delve into all these different aspects of MMA, like wrestling and submissions, and that got me to travel all over the world. Like, I visited Thailand for 2 months after I graduated high school to learn the Thai clinch and the elbows and knees, incorporate that. I went over to the States for on several occasions, both to like Florida to train with the American Top Team, and to California to train in San Diego with the Alliance Training Center, and also later to LA to train with the Lyoto Machida himself, who was the reason I got started. So basically, I flew all over the world. Like, every time there came a summer or a winter break, I would get a ticket somewhere. I didn't know anyone. I would go there. I would train for a few weeks, come back with a lot of new techniques, and kind of like form everything into my fighting style. And like, my coach Omar has always been like the center that I come back to, and like, I realize what works, what doesn't work, because in my opinion, he's the best trainer in the world, because he knows it all. So for me, it's been that has been the whole motivation going from karate to MMA. Like becoming a complete martial artist and never ever stop growing. Just keep learning because it's a, as I said before, it's a lifelong journey.
I love that, and I love your when you're talking about it. This, you sound so excited, and I think a lot of people, if you're good at something, let's take an easy example. Okay, you're a black belt in karate. Now all of a sudden you have this ego that you need to
Mm,
be a good fighter, right? Or
right,
it can be in any given field, and then you go to see something else, and most people shy away because they are have the fear of looking bad, looking like a beginner, because they're supposed to have all their shit together, right?
right.
But I love your approach that, hey, I'm gonna progress so fast. So can we just talk a little bit more about that, because I think I can learn
Mm,
a lot from that, and also our audience. How do you really incorporate that? Because there's also a ego, like, hey, I used to be a national champion, or
right,
I'm
right.
supposed to be good at this.
Yeah. So in traditional Japanese martial arts, there's a mindset. They call it shoshin, which means beginner's mind, and that's an approach that you can apply to anything in life, really. And I think the second you think you're great at something is also the second you stop evolving in it. So I've always tried to have that beginner's mindset in everything I do. And my first big realization was at that MMA camp when I came there as a black belt in karate. And I think, yeah, we had already met there because this was 2009, and I came
Yeah.
into the national team as a junior in 2008. So I was like a national team athlete, and I had a black belt, and I've been doing this my whole life. And then I realized, like, man, I know nothing. This Brazilian jiu-jitsu guys can just take me down and choke me out, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that was a big like pivot point for me. And as I said, like when you start something new, when you're a beginner, you progress so fast, like percentage wise. You start a complete new activity, can be art, drawing, a new language, anything, learning something. Uh, you maybe get 100% or 200% better every time. And that's really motivating, you know, seeing the improvement. And then when you have done something for maybe 10, 20 years, you can be glad to improve like 0.5% every time you go train, you know, because you're already so good. But having that beginner mindset and trying to find your weaknesses, because that's what you can improve most upon. That has been my approach, and I don't know how it works for someone else, but it's really motivating for me to feel constant improvement, you know. And MMA is such a diverse sport. So if I feel I'm stagnating in my wrestling, like nothing is happening, I'm on a plateau, I can go and focus on boxing for a few weeks, and I can find new things to improve in my boxing. And then maybe I feel nothing is happening in the boxing, I go back to submission wrestling for a while. You know, there's always something to work on. Not to speak about like cage fighting, like actually wrestling and using the cage as a tool. That's like a complete art in itself, and there's no separate martial art that trains just this aspect. So in a sense, like we're all beginners in MMA because it's such a young sport. If you compare it to wrestling or boxing, have been in the Olympics for I don't know how many hundreds of years, but like the old Greeks did those competed in those events. But like MMA, we're still seeing new trends emerge every year. Like someone starts to throw straight kicks to the knee, suddenly everyone does that. And then someone starts to like trap your hands on the ground to break your posture and punch you. Now this becomes a trend and everyone starts doing that. Then we have leg locks. That was the shit to know for a while. You know, there's always these trends uh, passing on, and that makes it such a fun sport to follow because everyone is getting better with every year.
Yeah. And Oliver, how do you deal with criticism and critique? Because I know during the years you've had a lot of criticism and critique, and like how have you been able to deal with that?
I think a lot of times you get what you reflect, so to speak. So having the approach of being best at everything and having a cocky approach and telling everyone what you're gonna do with your opponent, uh, that's gonna come back so much harder if it doesn't go your way. Uh, so someone like Conor McGregor using that, whole approach might have a harder time dealing with haters and stuff. Um, and I realized like that's not me. I can't try to have that kind of persona because it's not true to myself. So I don't know. I just try to be a good guy, a good role model, because that's what feels right to me. So when I realized like I don't need to follow anyone else's tracks, I create my own tracks and just be a humble guy. I received lots of less haters and stuff because they realize you're not trying to be someone who you're not. So in the past few years, I believe I have so many supporters, and like I get so much nice messages for every fight, before and after, and that's that has really been like a big turning point. I think like when you show your true colors, you're not gonna receive a lot of hate. But for example, I can tell my brother, he runs a huge YouTube channel and he has over 100,000 of subscribers. So he gets a lot of more of that hate than I do. And what he taught me is don't read the comments, you know. And there's a good saying like, don't wrestle with the pig because you're gonna get dirty and the pig just likes it. So if you can relate that to the haters, don't they want you to start to get angry and fight them back, but don't do it because you're gonna feel worse and you're just fueling their fire. So he just deletes the comments, and I when I got some haters back when I was signed to the UFC, that didn't feel I belonged there. Uh, at first, I started replying to everyone because I got emotional, like, why do you say that? Why do you think that? But then I
Yeah.
realized, man, that just gives them more fuel to attack. So I just deleted the comments. That was a great tip from him. But then now, today, I don't receive much haters because I don't give anyone anything to hate up on, I
Yeah.
think, because I'm trying to be a good guy.
Awesome. And let's talk about that. You had a 7 fight win streak, undefeated, and then you get drafted to the UFC. How did that feel? And how was it as far as mindset going into to fight? Is the same sport, but it's a completely different arena.
Yeah. That was the most transforming 2 weeks of my life because the UFC is like the pinnacle of the sport. There, more people probably know what UFC is than the term MMA.
Yeah.
And so I had been a professional for 4 years, and I had 7 straight wins, with 0 losses. And every fighter that starts to train imagines themselves being at the top, fighting for the UFC one day. And I had that vision like further in the future. And then suddenly the UFC comes to my hometown of Stockholm, and a Norwegian fighter gets injured, has to pull out on a 2 week notice. And my manager calls me from the United States and says like, you can get a shot to fight in your hometown in 2 weeks. It's this guy. He's a veteran in the sport. He's been fighting for a long time. He was 10 years older than me, and it's like you don't. He said like you only get this kind of chance once in a lifetime, you know. So I guess I didn't feel completely ready for this because suddenly it was here, the opportunity I had been working for my whole career, but I saw it so much further, uh, you know, years later in my career. But I thought, okay, maybe this chance will never come around again. So I said yes. I signed the contract, and those 2 weeks was a roller coaster of emotions because I was gonna fight in the Ericsson Globe, which is a very iconic arena here in Stockholm, and I had built up a lot of hype among Swedish fans because I was undefeated and had a pretty entertaining fighting style, and I was a young up and comer. So everyone here wanted to see me win, and do good in the UFC. Um, and at first, like, I was so stressed out because I had a super dangerous opponent. I didn't want to make a bad first impression, and all the expectation from the fans and the media started to build up, and so every day was a real struggle with the emotions. Like, I had this intense feeling that I didn't want to be alone. So I felt I had to surround myself with other people, my family, my friends. Uh, Suddenly I was scared to be alone, and I've never ever experienced that before because I like to be by myself. But this was something different. It felt like I was going to war, like. Or I've never been to war, but I can imagine it's the same kind of anxiety that you feel. Um, so I had a lot of help from my kickboxing coach, who is great at mental training and to deal with pressure. And we did a lot of visualization, like having my headphones on and imagining myself walking out to the fight in the Globe Arena, seeing my opponent. We would do this like guided meditations almost, to make me more comfortable with the whole scenario. And so when the first week of my training camp was done, I did 2 sessions a day, trained as much as I could during that short time frame, just like boosting my cardio, my VO2 max. Um, then everything like released in the when the fight week rolled in. It was Monday. We had like a media day. Wow, I felt so good, and I was so happy to be there. I had a new suit that sponsored bought me, and I went to the media day. I felt great. I could size my opponent up and see him for the first time, and all anxiety ran away because I felt like, wow, uh, I'm so privileged to be here. I should enjoy this moment. I shouldn't fear it. I need to like be in the here and now because this is gonna be over in just a week, and I will look back at it like what happened. So I really tried to cherish the moment. And when the fight night came, uh, it felt like I had done that hundreds of times already because of all the visualization and mental training. So I had basically no nerves at all. Like my heart rate was like a resting heart rate. And my brother came with me and filmed everything so I can still relive that moment. He is walking in with me with a camera behind my shoulder, and I can see like 10,000 Swedish fans standing up in their seats, and my name spinning around the Ericsson Globe. It still gives me goosebumps to this day. And I just felt so proud of that performance because of what I had gone through emotionally, and also did my best physically to prepare in that short time frame. And so even though it was my first loss, I was super happy with my performance, and I just felt like, man, I want to do this again. So that was like one of the biggest moments, craziest moments for sure in my lifetime.
I love your mindset, Oliver, and I think this is something that we need to approach more in life because I mean, you're around athletes and high performers all the time. Me too, and I see this a lot of times. People shy away from the best opportunities because of their own
Mm,
fears, right? Of
yeah,
looking good or fearing failure.
yeah,
How what do you want to say to those people out there that are kind of their biggest opponent themselves, just like you
mm,
were for that week, but you turn it
yeah,
around, which was great. But most people, it gets worse, right? That's why
yeah,
people
yeah, yeah.
throw up on the day of the competition. They don't enjoy the moment, and then their career is over, and even if they accomplish something, they're still not happy because it was just a struggle. And we don't want to go
Mm,
through life as a struggle, right? We want to
sure.
enjoy it.
Yeah, so a big inspiration of mine is Will Smith, and he said like the best things in life are on the other side of fear, and I can tell by experience now that this is true. And knowing that, and also having a good team supporting you, I think is super important. Because if I wouldn't have had such a great team of coaches and my family and my training partners, I don't know if I would have pulled that off. Maybe I would have ran into a punch and got knocked out because I would have been so, tensed up. I don't know, but as I said, like I went in there with such joy and could really enjoy the moment. And I think a lot of that had to do with the support I achieved, and also not to forget the mental training, because what you say to yourself becomes your reality. If you can see it in your mind, then you can achieve it in reality. So self-talk is super important, not only for big performances but in everyday life. If you focus on negative stuff like, oh, say my knee hurts, and you walk around and nag about your knee, okay, you're just telling yourself your knee's gonna hurt. So for me, my mindset has always been to focus on the positive. Like, what knee injury? I don't have any knee injury. I feel fine, and I tell myself I'm strong, I'm healthy, I'm happy every day, and that becomes something my body believes in. So I think positive self-talk is super important, so you can hype yourself up even if you don't believe in it. Fake it until you make it, uh, I had to tell myself for a long time that I'm a great fighter. I know what I'm doing. I'm strong. I have great cardio, and I just kept telling myself this, and it sounded fake because I didn't have the confidence really to to believe in myself. But I kept telling myself this over and over and over, and after a while, it became my new normal. It became a reality. So I think this is something that people really should use. Um, your mind is a super strong tool. It's free. You don't need anyone else to tell you you're bad. Uh, you know, Positive thinking gets you a long way. And if you don't believe it, keep doing it, and eventually your body is gonna adapt and it's gonna become reality.
Yeah, and one thing that I love, I'm so happy that you're doing well because you're one of those uh, guys that, I remember when we went to that camp the first time in 2008, and you remind me a lot about myself. I wasn't really that good. I was a little bit weird, funky, and people never thought anything special about me. But and I remember that with you as well. But here we are, like 12 years later. Instead of focusing on that, you have been doing the work every day. And
Yeah,
I mean, it all goes back to the 10,000 hour rule. You don't have to be the cockiest, have the best physique, or the most beautiful, or have the linguistics, or know it all, or come from a rich family, or whatever limiting belief
yeah,
you're putting in your head. You just need to do the work. And people that are seeing you now, they're like, oh, it's super cool. He comes up 3 straight wins, submissions, knockouts in Bellator. But we have to see and go back to this guy who has dedicated his life to doing all those small steps. So first off, congrats. Super
Thank you.
happy to see that. It actually shows that if we look at some of the best performers in the world, it is guys like you. Like, you're doing your thing every day and it adds up. So if you're
Mhm.
listening right now and you're like, hey, I don't have the talent, I don't have the means, I don't have that, you don't need any of that shit. You only need to, put in 10 years and do something every day.
Yeah,
You're going to be
yeah,
pretty good, right?
true. Yeah, persistence is number one, and patience. Actually, this is the logo of my martial art gym, and you can see there's a little kanji. It's a little sign in there,
Yeah.
Japanese calligraphy. It's pronounced nin, 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 and
Nin.
it means like persistence, perseverance, like steady improvement. And just like you said, like putting in the work, like every day, becoming 1% better. And I think a lot of people don't have the patience for that, because in today's society, everything is so fast. We want fast results. We want instant gratification, so just having a long-term goal and like not rushing things too much, that is key, I think, to become successful no matter what path you choose.
Yeah. Let's talk about mindset. So, second fight in the UFC, after a while, you get caught without really getting a real shot, right? In a way, because the first
Mm.
fight was 2 week notice with the veteran, and then second fight. Like, how did that feel? Were you angry? Were you upset? And how did that affect your confidence?
Yeah, so that was in 2018, the year after my debut, and I had this viewpoint that I wanted to be a karate fighter in MMA. I wanted to represent karate and have that style, which limited me in so many ways, because there's, as I said before, so much to learn. You have 2 arms and 2 legs. Use them to the best of your ability instead of putting yourself in a box. So I did a lot of mistakes based on that belief that I wanted my fighting style to look a certain way, instead of doing what's best. And I, um, I walked into a punch. It was, um, in my opinion, an early stoppage, because it's what you call a flash knockout. Like my lights went out for a split second, but I was conscious before I hit the floor again. And I pulled him into my guard, and suddenly the referee was on top of me and waved the fight off. And I remember just being completely empty afterwards. There was no anger, there was no sadness. I was just empty. I had no words, because I had had like a 3 month training camp. That was the longest I've had for any fight. And I felt so prepared. Um, and suddenly it was over, and I felt like I didn't get the chance to show what I was capable of. Because it ended so quickly, and I didn't even like started going, getting into my flow, my groove, so to speak. Like I wanted at least a second round to start to show what I could do. And so I didn't know what to say or feel or think. I was just completely hollow, empty. And the UFC decided to cut me from the rooster, because during that period there was a shift, I think, in the owners. The UFC got bought, and they had a lot of fighters, and they cut a lot of contracts. So they released a lot of fighters during that time period, and I was one of those who had to go, because there was a lot of fighters that want to come in to the UFC, obviously. So they wanted less fighters. So it was bad timing for me, but fortunately, Bellator MMA, arguably the UFC's biggest competitor, was interested, and they caught me up. Um, so the year after that fight, I signed a contract with Bellator, and I had a very successful debut there. And now I'm 3 fights in, and all are first round finishes. And I haven't had any easy opponent. It's been like veterans and straight up killers. So I've really been able to prove, not only to my supporters and fans, but also mostly to myself, that I am still developing and evolving like 10 years into the sport. Uh, I started in 2009 when I was talking about that MMA summer camp, and now it's 2020. That's that's 11 years into the sport, and I still feel like I'm getting so much better with every year, and my progress has gone even faster after the UFC debut. And I think because I really got to feel firsthand what it is at the top level of the sport, like the elite of the elites. And I had that realization what I need to know and learn to fight at this level. And a lot of things that I couldn't have learned before. It wasn't time for that because my own understanding of fighting wasn't that high. So I feel in the last couple of years, I've evolved 10 times as fast as my first years as a pro, which is kind of backwards what it's usually at. And I feel Oliver of today would wipe the floor with Oliver who made his UFC debut in 2017. It's like night and day. I'm a totally different fighter, and a lot of that has to do with also adapting the idea of having no style, like doing everything, not having any restrictions, saying I'm just this type of fighter, I want to do these types of techniques, but learning everything, having no boundaries, like being formless, more or less.
Shapeless like water. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, it's super cool. And I think this is also a good lesson for people to also take a leap of faith, because like even when you lose, you win, right? Because you get experience, and
Mm.
it's all about that journey of exploring yourself. And I remember when I used to compete in karate, you know, sometimes we went to these big tournaments with the best of the best, and it was so hard. But then
Mm.
when you came back, you learned so much, and the next competition, everything, like
Yeah.
I remember next time I fought on a national level, everything felt so slow, and I all of a sudden I could see everything, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's important to challenge yourself, and that's how you grow. How do you deal with that, because you're in a sport where it's important to challenge yourself, but having a good fight record, and also you're basically in there with someone that wants to rip your head off, so you also have to be cautious with that. Like, how do you deal with taking risks and taking good fights, but also developing in a good pace?
Yeah. So I was kind of progressing at a steady rate, like going up in slowly in rankings and in the level of competition that I faced when I from my first amateur fight until my seventh professional fight. And then it was like a sudden leap when I was thrown into the sharks in the UFC, and the level got so much higher. So I had to adapt basically, and learning by doing. Uh, and I believe it's important in a sport uh, like MMA, when the stakes are so high, like you can't do any small mistakes because it might get you knocked out. Learning to be razor sharp at the time you step in there. Um, is so many things combined to make that happen. Not only you have to be extremely physically prepared, you got to have the techniques in all the aspects of fighting, wrestling, and striking, and all of this. You have to have great cardio with a mix of great strength and endurance and explosiveness, and then the mental aspect of it all. Because I see a lot of fighters, they are great in the gym. They are like world champions. Wow, the technique, flawless execution. But then when they compete, they look like beginners. And it's all in here, because they put up too much pressure on themselves. Maybe they have a lot to win or lose. Maybe the fighting is their only income. So if they lose, they get half their salary, and they have to live on that for several months. Maybe they have families and other people that depend on them. Uh, so I think you
Is that
have
a
to
good or a
try to.
bad thing? Is that a good or a bad thing to have that pressure?
I think it depends on how you are as a person, because personally, I don't have to fight. I don't have a family that needs the money or kids or anything. I'm doing this just for myself to grow as an individual. So I don't have that pressure. And to me, that means, like, if I lose, no big deal. But to really perform at my best, I learned I need some pressure, because that fuels me and it really puts me on my edge. But someone who has that pressure because of a lot of obligations, maybe it freezes them, and they're not able to perform as well as they do in the gym. So I think this is very individual, depending on your background and your motivation of why you're fighting or competing in whatever sport you're doing. So a good coach has to find that. Like, some fighters need to be calmed down, relaxed, do visualization, maybe meditate before a fight, and some fighters like me maybe needs a slap in the face to get going.
Yeah.
And when I realized that I need that my performance gets so much better with a little pressure, I started to trash talk in my head. It's so unnatural to me, but it was a way of firing myself up.
Yeah.
So I would start to go into this other persona, this fighting mentality, where I tell myself things in my head like I'm gonna rip this guy apart. It feels so unnatural, so I could never say it out loud. But that really fuels my fire and gets me so much better. And this is a process you need to learn for yourself by just hours and hours and going to compete. And that's also for MMA why it's important to do, I think, a lot of amateur fights, because that's where you get your experience. You need to challenge yourself when it really counts, because you can't simulate that in a safe environment of your dojo or your gym, when you're sparring with your friends, because they want your best. So you need to spar or compete with someone who really wants to win, to get that out of you. And that's also why it's good to compete in anything you can. Say it might be grappling or boxing, or for me, like when the COVID situation came along here, I hadn't competed in a long while. I did the last event that Bellator held in Dublin, February 22nd of this year, and in the middle of summer, I was like, man, when are they gonna start with the competitions again? I need to find something that scares me now. So I went skydiving. I jumped out of an airplane from 4,000 meters, because that was like something that got me out of my comfort zone, something completely new and frightening. So I had to use my long experience of competing
Yeah.
in this scenario now instead.
I'm curious. I think how do you adopt your mindset when you're a competitor, you're an athlete, but you're also going into like a war basically when someone wants to knock you out. And I'm curious because I competed in karate for many years, but basically I maybe had a mindset that it was a war, but I never really I always knew that it's not that dangerous, right? But one time it was a competition, World Shotokan Championships, and every medalist had to go to a grand, like open division with no gloves. So I did that
Wow.
once, and I remember the fear that set in me when I did that. But also when
Mm.
I got on the mat that day, I have never been sharper in my life. I could hear everything, I could see everything, and I
Wow.
was, because it was now the stakes were much higher. So
Yeah.
I'm just curious, like, do you feel the same thing if you compare to competing in running or karate or
Mm.
kickboxing to when you actually go into a cage?
I think anything that you do for a certain amount of time is eventually going to become your comfort zone. So anything that's unexpected or new to you, it's going to get you out of the comfort zone, and that's what I can relate to what you just said there. Um, so for me, now fighting, so see in Swedish MMA we have like a great staircase, so to speak. You start with the amateur MMA in B class, which means there's no punches on the ground. You can only grapple. So if you feel afraid of standing and banging with your opponent, you can just grab him or sit down on the floor and he can't punch you anymore. Okay. So eventually that's going to become somewhat comfortable for you when you have done like 10 fights. So then you can take a next step, which is A class, which means you add another round and you can suddenly start ground and pounding. But you have these pretty big gloves and you have shin guards and stuff. Um, so after that, you turn professional, and that's when the protection gear comes off. So you have this steady like increase in danger, and I think you have to get comfortable inside like what you're doing enough to be able to perform at your highest, because only when we're relaxed, that's I believe when we can be our best in the flow state. It's that kind of middle ground between being super alert and being super relaxed. You can't go to one side or the other, because if you're super alert, you're super stressed, you're gonna gas yourself out. If you're too relaxed, you're not gonna have the reaction time, if someone explodes at you. So finding that middle ground is super important, and I think you need to have that, uh, just have that experience, and if it's too easy, or if you're too comfortable, that means the level's too low. It's too easy for you. You need to push the competition up, and if it's too hard, you gotta get demotivated, because you're only gonna lose. So in a sport like MMA, which is very individual, you still need a good team that can push you enough. So having the training partners at your level or a little bit higher to sometimes succeed and sometimes feel like, man, I should have done this or that better. Uh, that's how you find that peak performance. I believe.
Awesome. I have two more questions and then I'll let you go.
Mm.
So, one, where do you see yourself with, like, how long are you going to fight, and like, what's your main and biggest goal that you have?
That has changed over the years as I've matured and realized what's really important in life. And my goal when I started was just to see how good can I become, because I've been doing this since I was born, and I just want to see as an artist how good art can I create with my with my craft. And then, started competing. I started winning after having losing for 10 years. I started winning suddenly. I became a Swedish champion in amateur MMA. I defended my title the next year. I became professional, started racking up these wins, and that got gave me the confidence to believe maybe I can create a career out of this and become a UFC fighter or a Bellator fighter, or someone at the top level of the sport. And eventually I got there with hard work and dedication. And that's when you start to think about like, maybe I can get that title and such. But over the years, I realized that's not important to me because I'm not a natural born competitor. Um, and I'd much rather spread a good message than being just a good fighter, like Conor McGregor, for example, because we talked about him before. Is he a good role model? Very arguable, right? Uh, but I believe with such a big platform, you can really make this world a better place. And that gives my own egotistic training, because I'm fighting for myself, right? Not for anyone else. I don't have anyone to depend on. I don't have to win to get fight money to raise a family or anything. So to me, it's fighting is pretty, ego, because it's about me and my own uh, develop, development. So I want to use this platform for something bigger than myself. And I believe if I can get really good at this, I'm going to get people's eyes and ears, and I can really spread a good message. And I believe we need, in these crazy times, we need more love and not more, trash talk and hate and, look at me, I'm the best. And even if I would try that, it wouldn't come out naturally because it's not true to my nature. And having a good message gives me much more motivation. It feels like it gives my life a bigger purpose, instead of just going to the gym, fighting for a few hours and then go and compete and that's it. It feels like I'm actually fighting to make this world a better place, because the better I get, the more people are going to listen to me, and the more I can be a good role model and show what I believe is important in this life, helping others. If I get that Conor McGregor money, I will use every last penny to like save this planet and, plant trees, plant 1 trillion trees, save the rainforest, get rid of the plastics in the ocean. And that's kind of my motivation today. I don't care about belts and titles or who I beat. I was born into this environment. I didn't choose it, but I'm trying to make the best out of it.
I love that. And final question, Oliver, what do you want to say to people listening to this? What's your message, and how can they use that to start getting closer to their dreams today? Because that's what we're all about. This conversation has been amazing, but if you guys out there listening and watching this aren't taking action, then we wouldn't even need to record it. Me and Oliver could have a great time by ourselves. So, I mean, uh, what would you want to tell everybody?
There's been a lot of good things we've been talking about, like Shoshin having a beginner's mindset and not focusing on the results, but the process and all of this. But if there's one takeaway message uh, that I want to spread to people, it's try to be your best self. And only you know what that means, because maybe you're not into MMA or karate or whatever, but whatever you're doing, I think you need to find your passion, because that's what you will do best. Something that you truly love doing from your heart, not what anyone else tells you should do, but what you really enjoy doing. That's what you will become best at. And if you become really good at something, you'll get, as I said, for me, you will get people's eyes and ears, and you can be an inspiration and really make an impact in their lives too. And I've seen this firsthand also with my brother's YouTube channel. Like he's created this great community, and it's so much support and love. And these people find, they find each other from two different parts of the world, and they can really make an improvement in each other's lives, because they find like another family, an extended family, and everyone maybe doesn't have that. So whoever you are and whatever you do, try to be the best person of yourself, because it will spread ripples on the water, and you will inspire other people to do the same, which, you know collectively will make this planet a nicer place to be, with more love, and that's the most important thing, I believe.
I love that. And again, big fan. You're such a great guy, and grateful for you and all the help you've done for me as well. You when you were here visiting, you let me come with you guys and train with Leota Machida.
That's cool.
Had him on the
Yeah.
show a couple of times and become friends. So I appreciate everything you're doing. And if people want to connect with you, uh, what's the best way?
You can find me on social media, Oliver Enkamp, everything put together. Instagram, Facebook. My homepage is oliverencamp.com. You can email me there if you have any questions, collaborations, whatever. Um, yeah, so that's basically it. And I try to answer anyone who wants to get hold of me. So even though I'm pretty busy, I will give you my attention if you have uh, any questions. So
We appreciate
thanks.
that. And I want to thank you all that are still here. In this day and age, uh, one hour in is a long time, where most people tend to have less attention span than a goldfish, which is about 3 seconds. So we
True.
appreciate you guys. And know, if you're here, I think Tom Billius said that it's about 2% of the world population that are interested in this type of long format, deeper conversations. And I want to connect with you guys. I love that you're on a journey. So please check us out at ilovesuccess.co. We have more than 200 of these amazing conversations. And I'm just humbled that I get to, you know, share that with you and have these conversations. Also, please reach out to me at Peter Jumrukovsky or info@ilsuccess.com. I want to hear about your dreams. I want to hear about what you're struggling with and what you like, what you want to achieve in your life. Also, this is all free. The only thing I ask you to do is share this with somebody that can benefit from this conversation. Maybe give us a review on iTunes so more people can find us, or check us out on YouTube. That's it for today. Thank you guys, and see you next week.